Stanley McChrystal, General McChrystal, before he was fired, many of you may have read this in the New York Times, was a master at managing the press. And the way he managed the press is he would herd the press into a room in Afghanistan, and then they would give them a 1-hour PowerPoint presentation. And it always had to be with incredibly dense slides. I mean, there are lots of words that they all read together, the people in the audience, the person at the podium, or amazing diagrams. My colleague Peter Moyle's the expert at this, with lots of boxes and arrows written all over the place, including the comment, once we understand this diagram, we will know how to fight this war. And his staff said, we used to call it, this is akin to hypnotizing chickens. That's how they managed the press, and that's why you got, until McChrystal left, you actually get some pretty favorable press because you hypnotize the chickens. So every time you sit up here, you're getting hypnotized by PowerPoint. So I hate PowerPoint. It's not peer-reviewed. In the same way, blogs are not peer-reviewed. I suppose bloggers think it is peer-reviewed because someone writes some comments at the bottom of it, so therefore it must be peer-reviewed. But this is not the way to do science that makes decisions, but we're doing too much of it. The reason we are doing too much of it all comes back to my rant about the scientific adhocracy. We need to reinvent this adhocracy. We need to come make some investments in it. Right now, when I look at all the planning processes that are going on, Bay Delta Conservation Plan, the Delta Stewardship Council's Delta Plan, the State Plan of Flood Control, all of these do not tackle the hard questions about reorganizing science so that it will be cheaper, more efficient, and more effective. So many of these things that I identify here are weaknesses that have blossomed over the last 5 years in particular because of the chaos within the adhocracy. There's one shining group in here, and again, I'm putting in a plug for an organization I've spent a lot of time with, and that's now what's called the Delta Science Program. What was the Calvert Science Program? You all don't realize how important that program has been because it has enhanced the culture of peer review in science, and so much more is reviewed. I mean, I can remember the growth pains of trying to review things, products on a DWR that have never been reviewed before, and how difficult it was for DWR to have these things reviewed, and how upset they were that people said bad things about what they had written. That is, scientists. They were used to everybody else saying bad things, but some of the peer review really killed them, but that culture is changing. So I think that a lot of that goes to what happened in that particular group. Okay, so what I suggest we do about this. Okay, remember that your scientific institutions are here to support planning and decision making and to communicate the scientific rationale for those decisions, or at least to help you communicate that, and most importantly, the uncertainties within it. In our book that we just released, we have a long list of suggestions which were not controversial, so nobody knows about them. That's the way it works, right? We have a long list of suggestions for how one might reorganize government in itself and the science within government. And this is to combat, that's good, to combat science in particular, and some of this crisis science that we've been doing. We've got to somehow rebuild the credibility of our scientific institutions. And so we suggest, we have a number of things like get rid of, dissolve DWR and the state board and blend them together and actually make them a more centralized planning, planning and regulation organization. We have talked about decentralization to some extent of science. We talked about regional stewardship authorities, which are basically operating at basin scale, the kind of scale that regional water quality control boards do. And they would carry out and organize the science. And most importantly, they would integrate all 4 facets of water: supply, flood control, water quality, and ecosystems. Because right now, we have an apartheid system where we actually we separate those functions in science. So we have some very strong suggestions in that. We also have some very strong suggestions about how to change the funding mechanism for science. Again, I make the case, and I make it strongly, that science is as necessary a part of your infrastructure as the rocks you put on your levees. And so if you don't pay attention to that infrastructure and you continue to fund it with general obligation bonds, there's no wonder it's going to suffer. And so that failure to pay attention to that element of your infrastructure has allowed these various forms of things to blossom. In particular on the boom bust cycle, by the way, we suggest a public use charge for water. It's very controversial, of course, in these times, but that's why you make these comments. They should be controversial to start a conversation. And many of you see the LAO was calling for something very similar to that just yesterday. Okay, so in the end, I have no illusions about this combat science is absolutely necessary. It challenges orthodoxy. We need to have it. The climate change debate doesn't bother me at all. Not at all. It is good for the scientific community, the 95% of the scientific community, which is basically accepted the notion of climate change to be beat on a regular basis by a very loud and angry small constituency within science, and of course it's good. It challenges orthodoxy all the time. The same goes for Delta Science in particular. We absolutely have to have that. I can't wish blogs to go away. They will grow. And I can never wish PowerPoint to go away. This is enough for me to break out in a sweat with not having my PowerPoint press. Thank God for the iPad. See, this is a nice thing made by not Bill Gates here. So I just want to tell you, I'm so upset about this. I intend to write a blog about it, where I will post my PowerPoint, where I savage the science of those who I disagree with, based upon my own unpublished analysis. And doing this, I will meet the obligation of bond-funded contracts that I currently have to burn up as much money as I possibly can while addressing the crisis of the day. And if you don't like the sound of this, stick around next week. There'll be a different sound. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have time for just a couple questions, but I have one. So currently what you're saying is